my gosh. What a night that was, right? Well, Fox has finally admitted defeat. Mea culpa here. Fox News bowing to Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson, for that matter. We're going to talk all about that. Plus, thousands of outages all over the globe. I'm lucky I wasn't flying today. I got to fly somewhere next week. This is kind of scary, ladies and gentlemen. This is CrowdStrike's fault because they put some kind of upgrade in, and apparently it didn't go so well. Wait until you see what the CEO had to say, or what he couldn't say. I mean, he was really tongue-tied when he went on a television show earlier today. Really bizarre. We got to talk about the media's reaction to what we saw last night. Priceless as always. And you know what? I want to share my thoughts on Lou Dobbs, the passing of Lou Dobbs, who I knew very well. I used to do the show right after his. I used to fill in on his show for years when I had my 2:00 show. What a wonderful man. He will be very, very missed. He was so committed to America. He was so committed to the whole MAGA movement. And believe me, he was committed to Donald Trump. We're going to talk about Lou. I'm going to share some of my best memories of that legend of a man coming up. But first of all, welcome to the program. Hello, good to have you here. I am Trish. It's the Trish Regan Show. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you join the live conversation. I'm looking at all your stuff in real time, so careful, guys, okay? Careful, careful. Major news. Fox News has finally admitted defeat in a really spectacular, massive way. This is fantastic. They actually took Tucker Carlson on the air. CNN didn't, but Tucker Carlson was back on Fox, back in his time slot. We're going to talk all about it, but I do want to give you my reaction to what I saw there on stage last night. Something else, was it not? Donald Trump coming across as the ultimate unifier. That beginning part of the speech, oh my goodness, I had goosebumps the entire time. I'm looking at my family saying, he's going to be president, he's going to be president, he's going to be president. And then, occasionally would have to go out to the kitchen because I get a little emotional. Anyway, this was the line that everyone's talking about. Let's watch.
Must be healed. We must heal it quickly. As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States. Thank you.
Just amazing. Let's listen to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I like to let that sound, as we call it in the business, right, kind of breathe so you can get a feel for the room. I've been in so many of those rooms. I remember we were just talking about Lou Dobbs being there with him in 2016, and the energy was just everywhere, right? Everywhere. You could feel it. And in that case, you feel it coming right through the screen, right at you. And at that moment, you had to know. Joe Biden had to know. Barack Obama had to know. Donald Trump is winning this thing. I mean, unless they pull a rabbit out of the hat, and one that doesn't look like Kamala, or Joe Biden for that matter. Yeah, I'm telling you, he is winning this thing. We've got more on some of the poll data that I can share with you in a moment, but think about what he has been through. I mean, what a guy, right? Like, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine. You have something like that, you experience something like that, and then you're back there out in front. Well, by the way, they got snipers, up on the rooftops of the convention hall because your life is still being threatened. They have intelligence that suggests so. And there you are on stage talking to the people and just chatting. That's what he did. I mean, 32 minutes in, then he went off for another 60. And I say that was for the real fans, right? Because everybody else had gone to bed. And he just started talking. But he said something and he did something incredibly important, incredibly compelling, and showed once again that he's a human being. When he went over and kissed the uniform of the gentleman that we will now no longer know, Comperatore, who was killed Saturday, July 13th. Watch this.
Corey, Comperatore, unbelievable person, everybody tells me. Unbelievable. And seriously wounded. 2 other great warriors. Spoke to them today. David Dutch and James Copenhaver. 2 great people. I also spoke to all 3 families of these tremendous people. Our love and prayers are with them and always will be. We're never going to forget them. They came for a great rally. They were serious Trumpsters, I want to tell you. They were serious Trumpsters and still are. But Corey, unfortunately, we have to use the past tense. He was incredible. He was a highly respected former fire chief, respected by everybody. Was accompanied by his wife, Helen, incredible woman. I spoke to her today, devastated, and 2 precious daughters. He lost his life selflessly acting as a human shield to protect them from flying bullets. He went right over the top of them and was hit. What a fine man he was.
It's unbelievable. So that was, the right thing to do. I don't want to say well done, right? It's inappropriate to say well done. It was just the right thing to do as a human being. And that matters. In typical Trump fashion, he also had a sense of humor about things. Have you seen the chart? You gotta see this chart because this is the chart that should just be ingrained in your mind. It's certainly ingrained in his mind because he looks at this chart and says, this is the chart that saved my life, right? Take a peek.
Last time I put up that chart, I never really got to look at it. But without that chart, I would not be here today. Never got to look at
it. You saw the chart, right? It's massive. He has it on every single screen. And just what I want to say about that, knowing him and knowing how these events are produced, having anchored so many of them through the years, I just want to tell you, that's all him. That's all him. I'm sure he said to the producers, I want that chart and I want it big and I want it everywhere, because that chart saved his life and he knows it. But he's got a sense of humor about it, saying, hey, I never got to see the chart. Let's show everyone the chart. So I just thought that was kind of a neat moment. But look, any which way you slice it, he's here because of a miracle. If you're a religious person, you can't look at this situation and not think that there's someone else up there looking out for him. I don't know how you can. He knows that too. And I want to share with you what he said about this being, if you would, a kind of destiny. Let's play this clip.
Bullets were flying over us, yet I felt serene. But now the Secret Service agents were putting themselves in peril. They were in very dangerous territory. Bullets were flying right over them, missing them by a very small amount of inches. And then it all stopped. Our Secret Service sniper, from a much greater distance and with only one bullet used, took the assassin's life, took him out. I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here. No. Thank you. But I'm not. And I'll tell you, I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God. In watching the reports over the last few days, many people say it was a providential moment. Probably was. When I rose surrounded by Secret Service, the crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great, great sorrow. I could see that on their faces as I looked out. They didn't know I was looking out. They thought it was over. But I could see it. I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." Thank you. Once my clenched fist went up, and it was high into the air. You've all seen that. The crowd realized I was okay and roared with pride for our country like no crowd I have ever heard before. Never heard anything like it. For the rest of my life, I will be grateful for the love shown by that giant audience of patriots that stood bravely on that fateful evening in Pennsylvania.
Unbelievable. And he's grateful. And he's grateful to God Almighty, as anyone would be, should be, after something like that. But don't tell the ladies on The View. No, 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 ladies and gentlemen, because you're not supposed to have any appreciation for God, apparently. If you appreciate God because, gosh, you got by. But the nick of your life, somehow that's sacrilegious to thank God? According to Joy Behar, apparently she's the only one who's allowed to thank God. Donald Trump, forget about it. You're not allowed. Come on. Watch this. Watch this loser. Really.
I'm speaking to fellow Christians. I was raised Catholic. I'm a Christian girl. When something like this happens to you, like this assassination attempt, and you say something like God was watching me, that is a very unchristian thing to say because it's very narcissistic. What about Corey? What's his name? Comperatore, the fireman who also got killed.
I think it's unchristian.
What about all those guys who got killed on Sandy Hook? All of those people. Yeah. It's God was watching me and not watching them. There's something very disturbing.
God should have pulled the plug on that mic yesterday.
Note that she couldn't even say Corey Comperatore's last name. What is his name? Clearly irrelevant to Joy Behar. Let me tell you, I thank God every day for everything. You can call it narcissism or you can call it religion. But that's part of being religious, being thankful for the opportunities you do have and looking at the glass as half full and knowing that it's half full because someone upstairs is looking out for you. knowing and understanding that things sometimes don't always go the way you want, but they go that way for a reason. Joy Behar. Shame on you and shame on the Catholic priest that taught you. Catholicism's no excuse, by the way, okay? No excuse for that kind of behavior. And I say that as someone who grew up Catholic myself, for goodness sakes. Now, you know what? Somebody, whatever you believe, was looking out for Donald Trump. And he absolutely should thank God Almighty for that. So shame on you. I mean, we got to talk a little bit more about these ladies because they are just despicable. I mean, they are one of the reasons that he will win. I don't know how they still have a show. They won't for long. At some point, Disney's going to cut the cord, right? When they sell ABC News, you've heard me tell you that before. They're already entertaining ideas. They're looking at who they can sell it to. Bob Iger cannot wait to unload the thing. And when that happens, nobody's going to pay for the big studio audience and the giant production staff and the relatively large outsized salaries of the likes of Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar. But nonetheless, they're still on the air right now acting as irresponsibly as they possibly can. I mean, the media is just all over them, right? And this is what they do, and we're going to see some more of it with CNN, et cetera. I need to react to this for you guys. But before that, woo! Fox News, what happened? Suddenly Tucker's your guy. Suddenly Trump's your guy. I mean, we got a giant puff piece in today's Wall Street Journal all about Tucker Carlson. It's actually airing Saturday. Over the weekend, they wrote an essay, a whole frickin' essay. It's Rupert Murdoch saying, oh my gosh, am I sorry? I really screwed up because I really don't want you to break up my company in any way, shape, or form. And I really want to be able to continue with all the mergers and acquisitions I want to do. And I really don't want the Trump administration coming down on me hard with this FCC stuff and all the other stuff they could throw Rupert's way. So he actually went. He actually went to the convention. Like, that never happens. I've covered so many of them. I've never seen Rupert Murdoch. I've covered them. Remember, we were just talking about Lou Dobbs, and I'm going to talk about Lou in a moment, but I've covered them back in 2016 for Fox. And I've covered them for Bloomberg. I've never seen Rupert at any of them. Nope. And then suddenly he shows up to Sons on the Place because I guess he wants to kiss the ring. And so he kissed the ring by even putting Tucker Carlson on the air. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Think about that. I mean, this is like a giant U-turn. The guy that they fired, the guy that they tried to smear with all the stuff that was leaked to the media, is now back on the air, back in his old time slot, 8 p.m. Tucker Carlson, take it away.
I watched the video of what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania about 50 times. I think I was one of about 8 billion people around the world who watched it. And the more I watched it, the more it struck me that everything was different after that moment. Everything. And this convention is different. The nation is different. The world is different. Donald Trump is different. When he stood up after being shot in the face, bloodied, and put his hand up, I thought at that moment, that was a transformation. This was no longer a man. Well, I think it was divine intervention. But the effect that it had on Donald Trump, he was no longer just a political party's nominee or a former president or a future president. This was the leader of a nation.
Well done. Well done. Great speech from Tucker. And Fox News aired it. CNN, interestingly, did not. But Fox News aired it. You see, Rupert's realized he may have a little bit of a problem because all the smart money is on Donald Trump winning this thing. And you don't necessarily want to be on the bad side of the president of the United States. Now, do you, Rupert? I mean, you kind of were. Donald Trump made that very clear. Remember that interview? I played it for you. He sat down with Brett Baer and was like, hey, Brett, your ratings aren't quite what they used to be. And Brett's like, no, we're doing great. He's like, no, not so great. Not so great. And that was one of the few interviews he gave. And they've kind of tried to ice him out. I mean, they went with Ron DeSantis. They liked Nikki Haley. They liked anybody but Trump. But all those people came right back into the fold. Who did we see on stage this week but none other than Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis? And Rupert has to go all the way there and then has to take the feed with Tucker Carlson speaking because he's a little fearful of Tucker now because Tucker had a big influence, allegedly, reportedly, on the decision to go with JD Vance. You see, Rupert wanted the other guy, Doug Burgum. I remember when Rupert liked JD Vance. So I consider it neither here nor there. I think that Rupert is very transactional and it's just business. And I guess it was just business when he got rid of Tucker and he got rid of me and he got rid of Lou and he got rid of Steve Hilton and whatever. All right, fine. You do you. It is just business. But I kind of get a kick out of the ultimate F you, right? Kind of right back in his face. In other words, now you got to go kiss Trump's ring. You got to go kiss Tucker's ring. You got to put Tucker back on TV and devote some 40 pages in a PDF. I mean, that thing is long. You guys, if you're interested, there's a giant wet kiss to Tucker Carlson in this weekend's edition of the Wall Street Journal. I mean, all about how he lives up in Maine. And don't let that title deceive you. They did that just to seem like they were provocative, but it's called Inside the Strange New World of Tucker Carlson. Basically, they're saying that this guy is it. So that's Rupert's doing. He's trying to say, okay, we were wrong, you were right, blah, 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 like all is forgiven, except is it? Is it? Donald Trump is very political and he's good at business too. So maybe all is forgiven until it's not. So my advice, be careful. My advice is to be very, very careful because I don't think the Fox Newses of the world have the same kind of ideological bents that Donald Trump has. I think Fox News is concerned about Fox News. Rupert Murdoch is concerned about making more money for Rupert Murdoch. He's not concerned about heck, he's not even American. He's not concerned about the welfare of everyday Americans. Donald Trump, I actually think, legitimately is, if for no other reason than he wants to be able to point to the GDP chart and tell you, hey, you know what? We're growing by 6% now. He wants to be able to point to the inflation chart and say, look at how I brought that down. So, I mean, maybe it's motivated by his own sense of pride, but I'll take the motivation because he actually does want to see this success for America. And I'm not so sure that Fox News does. And I say this as somebody who used to work there. Nothing against them. There's plenty of great people that are still there. And I have many friends that are still there and, more power to them. But it's kind of freeing to be over here. Reminder, subscribe, like, share. I mean, it's super freeing to be over here because I don't have to send my scripts to anyone to get some kind of sign off from the higher ups. There are no scripts. I say to Drew, hey, we're going to run these sound bites. And Drew's like, okay, wait, where's she going next? I mean, this is total free for all, baby. Total free for all. But I want it that way. I want it that way because this is real, right? We need some authenticity in the news business, shall we say. I'm a pretty straight shooter. You're always going to know where I stand, and I do have an opinion. But I try to make sure you see all sides. I mean, why else would I play The View, right? Right? You got to hear where everybody's coming from, even the crazies. But Fox is bending the knee. Rupert's back in the house. Articles about Tucker, taking Tucker on TV. And they're kind of worried because you know what? There's a guy named JD Vance who used to be Rupert's friend. Now is, I guess, not, except he is. Because he's kissing that ring too, Rupert. But JD wasn't Rupert Murdoch Fox News' pick. And so it was actually Don Jr. and Tucker and Kimberly Guilfoyle, another former Fox person, that had a lot to do alongside maybe Peter Thiel, who he used to work for, and Elon Musk, that kind of were lobbying, if you would, for JD Vance, and JD got the gig, and Donald Trump Jr. couldn't be happier.
He's an incredible pick. I think he's an incredible guy with an amazing story, both in business and in life, and I think it's just going to be an incredible person to help unify this country.
And he knows he's going to be good. And you know what? Now MAGA has a future, and that was really important after what went down on the 13th, to make sure there was someone else there. Sure, Junior could do it, Eric could do it, but I don't think either one of them want it. And I think that they knew, and their father knew, that this has to continue on. So if you're keeping score, Tucker 1, Rupert 0. Donald Trump 1. Rupert 0. And Don Jr. and Kimberly 1 respectively. 0 for Rupert. So I believe we're up to 4 now. 4-0. Fox News has lost. You know who else is really, really worried that they might actually lose this round? Mark Zuckerberg over at Facebook. You see, Mark Zuckerberg was the one who was somehow in bed enough with the deep state that they shut down. They just shut down the former president's account. I mean, they did that on Twitter, too. Kind of amazing, right? The Ayatollah could have an account, but not the president of the United States. Think about it. So Mark Zuckerberg is now likely realizing he may need some friends in the White House because Biden's not going to be there forever. He sat down with Emily Chang of Bloomberg Television, whom I used to work with, and did this little interview in which he praised Donald Trump. Praised him big time. Calling him a bad... Can we say that on YouTube these days? Reminder, subscribe if you haven't. Subscribe, share, like, all of that. Really important right now. Really, really important. I think we can say it. Anyway, let's go to the clip of Emily and Mark.
I've done some stuff personally in the past. I'm not planning on doing that this time. And that includes, not endorsing either of the candidates. Now, look, there's obviously a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. The historic events over over the weekend. And on a personal note, it's, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life. But look, it's, and I think, look, it's, at some level as an American, it's like hard to not get kind of emotional about that spirit and that fight. And I think that's why a lot of people like the guy.
So Mark's kissing the ring too. What do you know? That's something for him to say that. I appreciate it. It seems very honest. But, he's a business guy too. Just like Fox News is trying to cozy up, you get Facebook trying to cozy up. Because you know what they're worried about? They're worried about a giant breakup, an antitrust issue. How can you have so many people on that one platform, plus Instagram, plus the Threads thing? You see, if they want to keep growing bigger, that's going to be kind of a problem with JD Vance there. JD Vance, who's kind of more into smaller businesses and smaller corporations and kind of feels very strongly. He's got like a whole thing about it. Well, that's not going to work with the Amazons of the world or the Facebooks of the world, right? Speaking of Amazon, we got Alexa talking here in the background. She didn't like that either. You see, I'm onto something, right? None of these companies want to get broken up. And so it's unusual to have a conservative that thinks that way. Usually conservatives are all about, okay, well, if the company gets bigger, that's good. But I think this team is looking at it a little bit differently. And they're saying, hey, maybe being bigger isn't best. And maybe the average person loses out when you have these quasi-monopolies out there. And so consequently, Mark Zuckerberg is like, I better make sure I have some friends. Well, let me see. I'm going to compliment the guy. And you know what? Donald Trump will take the compliment. So see, that's the difference between, say, Zuck and Trump. Trump will happily take that compliment. I think he'll always keep him at arm's length. He'll always know, wait a second, didn't you actually ban me from your platform? Just last Friday, this story was not reported by anybody but me. Last Friday, Meta said, we're going to open the spigot. We're going to take some of the restrictions off the account. You see, they let him come back onto the platform about a year ago, but then they suppressed him. And so now the restrictions have been lifted, and now Donald Trump can be on Facebook and communicate more with people on Facebook. But you're sitting there going, what the heck have we just been through, ladies and gentlemen? They tell the right, you're trying to seize our democracy and kill our country as we know it. And we're like, wait a second. We're not the ones doing what you guys are doing. 91 indictment counts? I'm sorry, but that was crazy. You're trying to bankrupt the guy with a $500 million fine? You're trying to put him in jail? Fani Willis? Can't you come up with anyone better than Fani Willis to go after him? Right? I mean, it's like a bunch of clowns, but nonetheless, those clowns have power, you guys. That's what's so frightening about where we've been and where we're going. That's why it's really important that we actually have some adults in the room. I don't think there's any adults in the Biden administration. You get the former MSNBC anchor, Jennifer Granholm, who doesn't understand energy markets and is making this giant push for EVs. Oh, well, all EVs except Elon's EVs. You see, those aren't allowed. All these EVs. And she doesn't understand how energy markets work. And nobody can seem to understand that when you limit the amount of energy on the global market, it's going to have an effect on energy prices, thereby driving them up. And when you drive them up, guess what? The cost of everything goes up because it's a big factor in everything. And you can't just flip a switch and everybody goes out and buys an EV overnight, Jennifer, as much as you'd like to do that. So you get somebody who doesn't know her, you know what, from her. Well, I'm not going to go there, but she doesn't know what she's doing. She is our energy secretary. And then you go over to Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, who has been wrong on every single issue. I mean, he may be a smart guy. He's just always wrong. I mean, how can you be wrong that many times in history? John McCain warned us about him. Yeah, John McCain. Amazing warning back in 2014. He wouldn't approve him as Deputy Secretary of State under Barack Obama because he said this guy is dangerous. He is so darn wrong on everything. Well, what have we seen? But a whole bunch of bad stuff ever since Antony Blinken came in as Secretary of State. He's, by the way, the guy that teamed up with Mike Morell to get 51 ex-spies to write that it was not Hunter Biden's laptop, and then made sure that the New York Post lost its Twitter account because it was the one that reported on the story. I mean, for goodness sakes, these people don't know what they're doing. And then you got Pete Buttigieg, who's rumored to be possibly stepping in for Joe Biden. And poor Pete, I mean, we got a transportation, you know what going on. A real storm, literally. And we haven't even talked about CrowdStrike yet and the flights that were canceled. You got a mess in the sky. You got a mess on the rails. East Palestine, Ohio, a good example. I mean, they do not have a smart team. And when you don't have a smart team, you leave the country extraordinarily vulnerable. I mean, I look at this team. It's one of the reasons why I started 76 Research. I mean, in full transparency, guys. I mean, I really care. I care about you. I care about our country. I care about making sure that you can provide for yourself in the future. And I cannot tell you over the years how many people, I mean, just people on the street, people I go to a conference and speak and they want to know what to invest in, or, you know, the makeup artist at work would say, you know, what do I put my money in? And this is why I created 76 Research. I created 76 Research because I want you to have good, you know, I can't call them safe necessarily. I mean, they're about as safe as me because, you know, look, they've been handpicked by the likes of me and Rob Horton, who's brilliant. And so, you know, it's probably about as good as you're going to get out there anywhere. But investing is always risky. The thing is, you got to do it. You got to do it. I don't care if it's $5 a week. You got to do it. And you got to know where to go and where to start. And this is why we created these model portfolios. We have the American Resilience Portfolio so that you can get growth outside of, say, NVIDIA, which is what you call a high beta stock, up, down, all over the place. So you don't want that kind of volatility necessarily, but you do want growth. So take a look at the American Resilience Portfolio, or take a look at the Inflation Protection Portfolio, which is a big part of, you want to make sure you're investing in companies that are going to keep pace with all this inflation and make sure that you got more coming in the door next year than you do this year. And then you need to also look at, say, income, right? If you want to retire, how are you going to keep paying the bills when you're retired? That's what the Income Builder portfolio is about. So we picked 3 really solid portfolios, 10 to 15 stocks in each, that you can subscribe to so that you can have an idea on where to invest. And we guide you through it. For example, we made a change in American Resilience just the other day, added a really wonderful company to that portfolio. We don't make changes a lot because we're big believers in you buy and you hold, but sometimes there's opportunities, especially when one stock does well. You don't want to have an overweight in that particular area. So then you start to diversify and add something else in. Anyway, go check it out. And for those of you that haven't subscribed yet, you can get this for $1 a month. $1 a month, the 76 report. The model portfolios are different. I think it's like an additional 23 if you add one of those on. But for $1 a month, introductory rate for 2 months, cancel anytime, you can get the 76 report. 76report.com or 76research.com. Get the report. Listen, guys, I mean, take care of yourself first. This is why I started this. I said to Rob, all this research is coming on from up high, right? Goldman Sachs is the world, which I used to work at. They're disseminating all this information down, but by the time it gets to your average person, like, it's complicated and it's not always as authentic and real as it should be, because there's so many vested interests. Rob can tell you all about it because he worked at Wall Street the last couple of decades, ran billions of dollars, and they have all kinds of rules, especially regarding, say, ESG, and then DEI is creeping into the equation. And it's like, wait a second, no. We're capitalists here. We just want to make money, right? How can we make money? So this is what this is about. But not no quick fixes here. I don't believe in that. This is about steady Eddie, okay? So take a look at the 76 Report, 76report.com or 76research.com, and use, oh my gosh, I forgot, code word dollar, DOLLAR, code word dollar, DOLLAR, dollar. We want a strong one, by the way. I don't know, it's always what everybody agrees. Some people want a weaker one so that we can ship more goods overseas, but I don't buy that. I believe in a strong dollar. DOLLAR, that's your code word. You get it for $1 a month for the first 2 months. The media, I think they're suffering from some kind of really bad case of TDS. And somehow it got ratcheted up into high gear last night because you had people like Tucker Carlson. Didn't they cancel him? How'd he wind up back on stage? Tucker Carlson and Hulk Hogan and Kid Rock. Kid Rock, the guy who took out Bud Light, who's suddenly drinking Bud Light again. I think there was some money involved in that. Anyway, these guys are all up on stage. And the look on Joy Reid's face was priceless. Right? We could do a credit card commercial with that. Priceless. She just couldn't believe it. Jake Tapper couldn't believe it. Joy Behar couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. This is like toxic masculinity, to use one of their phrases. That's what that was. Do we have any of Hulk? This is great. Hulk Hogan, ladies and gentlemen, like taking off his shirt. We're gonna get that in a second for you because it's just great. He's like, Trump mania. And then you had Kid Rock. Drew, you have Kid Rock too? Because these guys, like, it just cracked me up. Like they just kind of owned the place. And then, Jake Tapper's like, wait, what's going on? Joy Reid's like, oh, this is a Trump coalition of white men. Hulk Hogan, you're in trouble. Over on MSNBC, they're really not buying this shtick. Listen, Hulk is really, it's interesting because he's known Donald Trump for many, many years. And the look on Trump's face, he was so delighted. And knowing him, I know that he's kind of a producer at heart, right? So he's looking at this and he's like, just loving it because it's what you call in the business good TV. Take it away, Hulk Hogan.
And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
Trump's like, that's my guy. I didn't realize this. He's loved wrestling forever. And so he met Hulk like years and years ago. Hulk told the story about how he just won his first really big thing and Trump was there and everything. So it's kind of fitting. I'm on stage tonight with him here. And he's known Dana White forever. And Dana White came and spoke. And I was like sort of amazed by that. I love that about him in a way because when you couple sort of his love of wrestling with the fight, that just instinct that he had when he had just been shot at, it's really interesting. But not everybody liked this, especially over at MSNBC. They saw Hulk Hogan, Tucker Carlson, and Kid Rock, and they just flinched in real time. Watch Joy.
It's interesting because we were talking about this during the break. I mean, this is the Javier Milei election, right? I mean, and then in Argentina, that's how that went, which is that you had this coalition of, and not to be cruel, but, it was described as sort of an incel election. It was the young, angry men of Argentina who, they wanted a macho candidate. And it went along with policies like banning abortion, banning birth control, and, the idea of no-fault divorce. It all kind of goes together that you've seen this kind of election before. You see the same thing in Hungary. Like the Orbanism of the party it's rooted in returning white Christian men, but also white men and white adjacent men, black men, brown men who are like white adjacent in terms of trying to also be in that dominant position in society. And then you have women who are willing to go along with that, right? There are a certain number of women who are also willing, the trad wife sort of thing. And so what you've seen on the stage, but what's interesting though, is it JD Vance who promotes this kind of thing? He says there shouldn't be no-fault divorce. He says women in violent situations should stay. He didn't say that in his speech yesterday. No, there was no talk of abortion. No. There was no culture war stuff regarding men and women because they know it's deeply unpopular. Well, there you go. Here he is. Donald Trump taking...
She really doesn't like him. Understatement of the year, but no, she really, really doesn't like him. You know, they're really off, by the way, for saying this. It makes me angry. I played you the clip, and I think we're going to have it out this weekend of Alex Wagner talking about how there were like Easter eggs of white nationalism there, because how dare JD Vance say that he wants to one day be buried in his family plot with his wife. That's somehow like some call to white. And I'm like, excuse me, like she's not exactly blonde and blue-eyed, okay? She's originally, her family's from India. And it's like he's being inclusive and I love my wife and all I came with was nothing other than like a cemetery plot. And somehow it gets inverted and twisted by the likes of MSNBC. I mean, really weird. I think we have this. I might as well show you because it kind of just makes your skin crawl. Let me remind you what he said. He said, when I first met my wife, I came with nothing. I loved it because same with my husband and I, like neither one of us had anything. I had a lot of college debt. He had law school debt. And, like that's sort of the American way, right? But you make a life together. And this is what he did with his wife, Usha, who, by the way, has a huge career. And she was a former Supreme Court clerk. I mean, that's like a big deal, very hard to get, brilliant lawyer. And now she has a big job at a big firm, more than any of these MSNBC people ever dreamed of doing if they have law degrees. And so it's kind of disgusting to see this kind of sentiment, but let's play it for you anyway. This gives you some sense of where they're coming from. Alex Wagner on MSNBC.
I know that there was not the same red meat sort of blood and soil nationalism that you might hear in, other parallel universe Republican conventions. But I do think there were some sort of Easter eggs of white nationalism in the speech. One of the things that stuck out to me was when he started talking about what America is. He said, America is not just an idea. It is a group of people with a shared history and a common future. The thing about America is that it's not a group of people with shared history. In fact, I think a lot of people would argue it's quite the opposite. It's a lot of people with different histories, different heritages.
His in-laws don't share the history.
Exactly. And that's the other piece of it. He went a long sort of a paragraph, at least, about this plot in eastern Kentucky where his 6 generations of his family are buried. And his hope is that his wife and he are eventually laid to rest there and their kids follow them. And I sort of understand the idea of sharing the burial plot, but it also it reveals someone who believes that the history that the family should inherit, and indeed the history that should be determinative in the story of the Vance family, is the history of the Eastern Kentucky Vances, and not the Vances from San Diego, which is where his wife is from and where her Indian parents are from. But in America, it doesn't always have to be the white male lineage that trumps that defines the family history, that branch of the tree supersedes all else. And I just think the construction of this notion reveals a lot about someone who fundamentally believes in the supremacy of whiteness and masculinity. And it's couched in a sort of halcyon, revisitation of his roots, but it is actually really revealing about what he thinks matters and who America is. And that America is a place for people with a shared Western background. And that is the idea.
Oh my gosh. Like that is contorted. That is really contorted, messed up, quote unquote, intellectual thinking. I mean, here's a guy just saying, hey, hon, I got nothing other than a plot of land with some dead people. And one day I'd like you to join me because I want you to be part of my family. And then she takes away that. I mean, it just gives me the creeps. Wow. But you know what? A lot of people over there kind of give us all the creeps, shall we say. there's a big story out today. It's quite alarming. I'm actually traveling next week, so I'm glad that it happened today and not next week. Can I thank God for that, or is Joy going to get mad? I think I'm not allowed, because that would be narcissistic, right? Joy Behar just said, you can't thank God because that would be narcissistic. But you see, there's this videotape making the rounds. CrowdStrike is the company that actually secures, if you would, many different software systems. And so it's an important part of cybersecurity, and they secure a lot of banks and airline programs. And well, if they have a problem with their update, then that means a lot of stuff's going down. And that's exactly what happened. So a lot of flights were canceled all over the globe. This is considered a global mess. They're saying at this point that it wasn't some kind of cyber threat. It was just kind of a messed up update. But the CEO went on to NBC this morning and was asked a kind of obvious question by Savannah Guthrie, who said, well, why don't you have some kind of backup? Like when you guys do these updates, these patches effectively that come in, like why isn't there some kind of backup system? Why is it that all the flights now are getting canceled and people can't access bank information, etc.? And well, his response was really tongue-tied, to say the least. Let's watch it.
It's a single content update that has managed to shut down air travel, credit card payment systems, banks, broadcasts, street lights, 911, emergency around the globe. Why is there not some kind of redundancy or some sort of backup? How is it that one single software bug can have such a profound and immediate impact?
Well, when you look at the complexity of cybersecurity, you're always trying to stay one step ahead of the adversaries. Excuse me. Man, just 1 second, please.
Oh yeah, take a drink of water.
It's like a Marco Rubio moment, okay, in honor. Anyway, he went on to sort of explain that it's pretty complicated stuff. And as I understand it, it is fairly complicated. And, you can have backups, but maybe the backups don't always work. Anyway, it's frightening. We're happy to hear it's not a cyber security issue, but you know what? Like, we don't really know, right? Like, let's be honest. We don't know a lot of stuff. We still have a lot of questions about this kid and some of the reporting that has come out. We have learned that Secret Service had identified him as a threat almost an hour beforehand. So why is it that it took so long to take him out in that one moment in time? We have a lot of questions. And I want to spend some time on this because I really need to report around it. I need to talk to some sources, and I want to come back to you because I'm hearing a lot. I just want to make sure that we are on solid enough ground as we get this, all of this information in. And this is just my journalism training. I don't like to put things out there without having vetted it fully, but I'm hearing a lot and I need to understand more. So we're going to talk about that in depth on Monday because there are so many questions and I want to go through these like one by one. But I do want to take a minute and say how sad I am to see that Lou Dobbs has passed away. Lou Dobbs, legendary business anchor who I grew up watching on TV and then had the pleasure of working alongside for many years at Fox. I just want to say, Lou, you really, you set a very high bar. This is us back. I've thought about him a lot this week, actually, guys, because, it's the RNC. And Lou and I were there together. I remember I was anchoring all the coverage. Neil Cavuto had a very, very tough situation with his heart, actually, and had suffered because of that and had some kind of, I think, a quadruple bypass or triple bypass surgery. And so they called me and they said, Neil can't do this. Would you anchor all the primetime coverage? And I said, sure. I had a loved one, a family member that had just struggled with something very similar to Neil. And so I was sort of acutely aware of this at the time. And I said, yes, I'll go in, I'll anchor this. And I said, but could we get Lou to, stay with me? And they said, well, you can ask him. And I said, Lou, would you just, you don't have to just stay with me. Like, just be there as a commentator because your insight is so unique and so special. And I will tell you that he was sort of MAGA before there was ever MAGA. In fact, I don't know if many people know this story, but his wife told me Steve Bannon like showed up at their house, at their farm out in Jersey and tried to convince him to run for president. This was years before Donald Trump was tapped. And it's because he embodied, I think, so many of these values that are really important to Donald Trump and to the MAGA core audience. And Lou didn't want to do it. He just, he didn't want to travel. He didn't want to campaign. He didn't want to do that. But he believed so passionately in America and what America stood for. I mean, borders, that was his issue long before anybody was really talking about that. And he used to get criticized for it at the time. 60 Minutes did a special on him. His wife is from South America or Central America. And his wife, but she came here legally. And his mother-in-law lived with them. And look, I mean, he wasn't in any way against immigration. He was against illegal immigration. And so he got kind of a bad rap for things. Here we are with Karl Rove at the RNC. And you know what? Lou was great. I said, Lou, would you just stay for an hour? Do you know he stayed with me every night until the end of the program? We'd get off at 11 or 12. And he stayed right through the end. And we had such a good time. He used to ask me to fill in now and then on his show when he could. And it got harder when I moved out of the city. I was like, Lou, I love you, but it's a long hike for me. And it was back when I had my 2 p.m. show and I'd do 2 to 3 and then he was on at 7. But then eventually I got put in that primetime spot, even though I live so far away. So I did that and I was on after Lou every night. Lou was a great friend, but boy, he could be a tough customer because Lou was about Lou, right? So we didn't have a lot of crossover, which I always missed because however they stacked that deck, you always had to go to a commercial break. So it would be Lou's show and then Trish's show, which was kind of a bummer because I used to want to always talk to him, but we didn't have that. There was like a hard commercial break in between. And sometimes I think just to rattle me, he'd go, yeah, and by the way, you can come watch me over on Tucker. And I'm like, no. Anyway, he was a fantastic guy who believed in America, was at the forefront of economic journalism. Let's face it, right? I mean, business journalism really exists because he started it all. This was the guy at CNN who made it interesting before CNBC was even around. So I just wanted to give a shout out to him to know, to let you know how much he will be missed. And he was working right up until almost the day he died. In fact, he was just on TV a couple of weeks ago. He had his podcast. Amazing, right? Amazing, amazing commitment from an amazing man. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for all you do for your commitment. I know how much Lou appreciated you. I so appreciate you too, guys. We got good things coming our way. I'll see you Monday.